Today I'm in a hotel. I'm seeing a client this evening. We're going out for a meal and also some evening drinks. But that isn't why I want to do a video today. I want to discuss my talk that I'm doing at PHP South West in April. The talk is all about why you should and shouldn't use a framework, be it whether you're a PHP developer or a JavaScript developer. I have talked about this before, especially why you shouldn't use a framework. I need to get an abstract ready for the talk, so I thought I would use this video as a means of talking about how I'm going to split the talk up, all the discussion points and so forth, just get the stuff out of my head into a video, and then what I'll do is I'll produce the abstract, and I'll sort of flesh it up a bit and tidy it up. How I'm going to carve that out into a talk that I'm doing for PHP South West in April. Okay, so what I'm thinking about doing is splitting up the talk into 4 sections. I should start by saying that this is going to be a lightning talk, so it is only 10 minutes long. So I'm going to try and split it up to 4 sections, each section being 2.5 minutes. Or so. Plus you've got the questions, plus you've got the introduction and so forth. I'm kind of thinking that the first half is going to be tackled in 2 separate perspectives. The first one is learning a language. So this is where you've either learned a language before and you're learning a new one, or whether you are completely fresh to programming, and so that is the first sort of quarter of the talk. The next one is talking about the perspective from being in a professional position. So when you're actually being paid to do some work, the decision of whether or not to use a framework or not, and the pros and cons. I'm kind of thinking that the talk should be split up in 2 sort of 2 groups, right? So on one side of the screen there could be pros, and on the other side of the screen there could be cons. So I'm going to be looking at this from those 2 perspectives. So hopefully that will take me up to halfway. Then after that we're going to possibly talk about when you have to either use a framework, or when you are forced to not use a framework, because there are times when you simply, due to things completely out of your control, you have to use a framework, or you simply can't. Maybe perhaps the hardware doesn't support the version of software that you need in order to have the framework. So for instance, certain frameworks can only be now, or certain versions of frameworks at least can only run on PHP 7. We're not going to focus specifically on PHP. Yes, it's a PHP South West talk, but I think the things that I want to talk about can be used in other disciplines, so JavaScript and Python and all of that kind of stuff. They all have their own frameworks. But I think that the reason why you shouldn't use a framework are quite similar across the board. So yes, the examples are probably going to be PHP, but they're not going to be, it's not necessarily going to be required to know PHP in order to understand the talk. As always, when you're in a hotel, you have your tea, your cups of tea, or coffee. It's instant, but hey ho. I think the last part of the talk, I think the last section, the last 2.5 minutes, is all going to be about the misconceptions of using a framework, because there are a lot of people who think that you should just suddenly learn a framework, regardless of the benefits or the negatives that framework may have, and may push you down the road it may push you down. Also, the misconceptions that people have that are, what's a respectful term? They're not technically minded, but they are technically aware. So for example, recruitment agents, or just general junior developers who are new to the game, right? The fact that there is this thing about the difference between frameworks, libraries, and obviously language, and how that can be blurred and kind of a grey area. I remember having a talk with a recruitment agent. I say a talk, but it was basically a long-winded discussion, shall we say, where I was telling them that yes, I've known PHP for several years. At that time it was probably half a decade, and they couldn't understand why I didn't have Cake PHP on my CV. And I was saying, well, I have built sites in Cake PHP, but if I put down everything that I've done in my CV, it's going to be very long. Not to blow my own trumpet, but you put down your strongest points, and Cake PHP isn't my strongest point, but I know Cake PHP. But I was trying to convince the recruitment agent that Cake PHP isn't a language, it is a framework. It's not different, it's not a variant of PHP, right? So yeah, I think the last part of that talk is going to be about those kind of misconceptions, really. Now, I have done a talk before at PHP South West. It's a lovely group. It's a lovely group of people. And I was pretty nervous. The talk I did was all about Docker image sizes and how to reduce your Docker image. That was really good. I enjoyed doing that. So I am a little still hyped from that. But I'm still a bit nervous. This talking in front of a camera is totally different from talking to a group of people, especially when those people are highly intelligent. They're professionals in what they do. And I know that a lot of them will be using frameworks. I know that a lot of them may be maintaining frameworks. So I need to sort of approach the talk in a very respectful manner. That's what I hope, I intend to come across. I might have a disclaimer in the talk that says that I believe that frameworks are a good thing. I don't want people to think that, oh, I'm a framework hater, because that certainly isn't the case. I use frameworks all the time, but I do think that there are times in our development journey where we have to take a step back and think, is the framework that I'm using, is it actually needed? Is it going to benefit the system? Whether you are learning a language or whether you are building some project for someone who is going to pay you. So let's talk about the first half of this talk, the two perspectives, the learning perspective and the developing something for a paying client. I think those two perspectives will have different priorities, different requirements, maybe responsibilities, because when you're being paid for something to be built, you obviously need to make sure that it works, right? You need to get it on time, deadlines, that kind of thing. You need to make sure that it's secure. Whereas you have different requirements, responsibilities, priorities when you're learning a language. Now, unfortunately, I am aware that there are developers out there who know Symfony more than they know PHP, or they know jQuery more than they know JavaScript. And that's a pity, I think, because you are tailoring or forcing yourself down a specific route. I would say that I guess I would say that I'm framework agnostic. I'm not brand loyal. If a client wants something written in Laravel, that's fine. If they want it in Cake PHP, that's fine. If they want it in Symfony, then fine. There is, of course, a bit of a danger there, because you are basically a jack of all trades rather than an expert in one particular subject, in one particular framework. But it's worked out for me all right, and I do believe that knowing a language more than knowing a framework in general is a good thing, because you can just drop out of that framework and you can understand the language and understand the code without having to understand the framework in a fully bodied understanding. I hope that makes sense. But the thing is, there's people out there who don't know how to use the session handling in PHP, but they know how to do it in Laravel or Symfony. And trying to get that across to recruitment agents, trying to get that across to people who aren't in this industry but are part of the industry, who touch upon this industry, is a bit difficult sometimes. It is a bit of a challenge. So yes, this is basically what the framework, if you will, of the talk that I want to do at PHP South West. So as you can see here, I have my laptop. I'm going to be using it to do some work before I leave today, and I used it on the train to do some work before I got here. But I just wanted to get all of those thoughts on why you should and shouldn't use a framework out. But I'd be interested to know what you guys think. If you've got any thoughts on this subject, if you've got any suggestions, if there's been some points that I haven't thought of yet, then put them down in the comment section below. I'll appreciate your comments. But anyway, I better shoot off. But thanks ever so much for watching. Happy coding, everyone, and I'll see you again soon. Cheers, bye.